Hello, it is Greg with the Road Trip Podcast here with my co-host Christopher Walker. What's going on, man?
What's up, Greg? Hey, everybody.
Heyo, hello. I said heyo for a second. Wow.
Heyo.
So we have Neghar on the podcast with us.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
It's absolutely our pleasure. So we're gonna get some really cool stuff today. But do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself and tell them about your website, and then we can go from there?
Cool. I am a fitness and lifestyle entrepreneur. I find that to be the easiest explanation, the one that confuses people less when they ask me what I do. So primarily I run a website, Fonooni.com, and it's basically just fitness and nutrition, like no-nonsense fitness and nutrition tips, primarily for women, a lot of lifestyle stuff, getting more into some fashion stuff. So I'm working with a lot of athletic wear companies to do some reviews and test out product and stuff like that. For women, from fitness to nutrition to fashion to fat loss, lifestyle, whatever women need to hear about. And my approach is a little bit different in that I'm not a eat this to look this way kind of person, or this is your diet and this is your exact workout plan. It's a lot of adaptability and learning about yourself and learning how to make fitness and nutrition enrich your lifestyle as opposed to detract from it. So it's a little bit more of a relaxed approach. I also write for numerous other online publications, most notably Schwarzenegger.com. I'm also a blogger for MyFitnessPal for their Hello Healthy blog, and just contributing to a lot of other areas within the internet space. And I also do speaking engagements, primarily speaking to women about how to live a vibrant life and to trainers about how to teach their female clients how to live a vibrant life. So that's me in a nutshell.
So just for a second here, so how did the lifestyle aspect of your business evolve? Did you start as primarily in fitness, and then just organically you found that there's so many other areas that kind of went hand in hand?
Yeah, I actually I started my blog in 2009. I've been training clients since it's been 14 years since I started as a personal trainer. And then in 2009, I started my blog and just kind of realized that what was missing for me, because I'm a writer first and a coach second and always have been, and so what was missing for me was really that creative outlet. Started my blog, and it was really all about food and exercise, and it was a lot more on the scientific front just because I was working full-time with clients, and that's kind of where my brain was at the time. And so little by little it's evolved into more lifestyle type blog entries and just my whole vibe in general. And I think it really started with I want to say maybe in 2011 I had sort of an emotional breakdown. A lot of really intense things were going on in my life, and I blogged about that, and it was so transparent, and it was so not fitness or food related at all, and I think that was kind of the turning point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of
myself. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, no, sorry. I just missed you there for a second. But
okay.
Yeah, that's for sure a turning point like that can definitely put other things in perspective and then kind of create a more of a holistic total approach.
Right.
Well, that's what most people need to hear too, from us, from people who are blogging about fitness, the lifestyle aspect, because there is context to it within a life. You have to have all of the elements balanced in order to be successful.
Absolutely. And so I think what it is that as fitness professionals, if we want to be able to incorporate other things into our brand, you have to give yourself permission, really. And that's really all it is that you might blog about something that has nothing to do with what you've blogged about previously, and you might get a few people saying this has nothing to do with fitness, and you just have to be well, it doesn't matter because this is my blog, so I'm going to write about whatever I want to write about, and just give yourself permission to corridor. My brand is called Eat, Lift, and Be Happy, and I made it that way purposely so that it could be whatever I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, that's really smart. It's funny how people are well, especially because you have your blog on your name,
right.
The domain,
right?
Yeah. So people are like, well, you can't blog about that. And it's like, it's my blog. Yeah, I can blog about
Yeah,
whatever I want.
I can blog about whatever I want. My name, that's my name, that URL, and that's me on the front page. So I think you kind of have to let that happen sort of organically if you start off in a certain way. So for me, it was like little by little, and like it's been a couple of years now that I've been talking a lot more about mindset related things. And so now that I've been doing that for a while, I feel very comfortable getting more into the fashion aspect of it because I have sort of like leaked it out there little by little. So when I post things on Instagram, I'll post a fitness related thing and then I'll also talk about what I'm wearing. And that has started to catch on little by little. And then people are asking like, what are you wearing? Where do you get your leggings? Where do you get your headbands? You know, what kind of workout attire do you wear when you're like a muscular woman? I can't find anything that works for me. And so that kind of now I feel really comfortable just putting it out there as a part of my brand.
Right. I mean, that's funny because I always get like, the odd email, the odd Instagram comment being like, "Yo, Greg, what T-shirt is that?" I'm like, I don't know. It's just a random T-shirt. Like, it
Right.
doesn't have a significance. I probably got it at H&M. Like, there's nothing special about this T-shirt. But like, yeah, people want to know what else is going on in your life when they've been following you, your fitness tips, and it's
Right.
really a lot more than like just fitness because we're not just doing fitness just to be really great at fitness. It's also so it fits in line with other areas and kind of enhances everything. I always like to kind of to ask this with the guests is like, where did you really get into fitness? Like, how did that go down? How did that happen? Because I think that's like a really cool story.
So I think I have a little bit of a different approach than a lot of people who are particularly like strength coaches, like full-time strength coaches. A lot of people go to school to be a strength coach. I was in school as a journalism major because I've always been interested in writing. I decided when I was 8 years old that I was going to be for my options. I have since lost all interest in politics, so writing is my only option at this point, and my preferred option as well. But so I was going to school and I was working as a personal trainer. My first job out of high school, I started working as a personal trainer. I've always been an athlete. I played softball in high school, and I've always enjoyed being in the weight room. It was something that for me was never. It's like one of those things when people ask you like, how long have you been here? And it's like, well, I've always been here. I don't know when I started. It's just always been a part of my life. But I don't think I ever saw it as being a career. It was more so just like a hobby, something to do while I was in school. And while I was in college, 9/11 happened. And at that point, I decided to join the Air Force. And I spent the next 4 years as a linguist in the Air Force. And that moved me around the country a little bit. And when I got out of the Air Force, I actually got out because I was pregnant and I didn't want to be a full-time military mom. So I ended up getting out and I had my son and I went back now before I joined the military, which was training clients. And it was something that I could do flexibly, and being a single parent, that was something that was really important to be able to do something that would allow me to make my own schedule and work around my schedule with my son. So I went back to training clients, and it was a really interesting experience because I had this military background and I had the opportunity to take a very high paying elite government job. And I just didn't want to do that. I just wasn't interested in it. But everybody around me, my family, my friends, were pressuring me to, do the responsible thing, do the smart thing, take a government job. And so what I did was I gave myself a deadline. I need to have X amount of clients in 6 months. I gave myself 6 months to, I don't remember what it was, some arbitrary number, but I need to have this amount of clients because that would have been the amount of clients I would have needed to pay all my bills and sort of break even. I was living in Baltimore and I grew up in California, so you guys know, as like starting off in the fitness world, like a lot of it is word of mouth, a lot of it's grassroots, and client, they're their friends, and then you have more clients. And if you're not from the area, it can be really difficult to grow a following because you don't have all those connections. So it was slow going, but because I set myself a deadline, it all worked out. And by the time I left Baltimore, I had such a full client roster that I couldn't take on more clients. And that was pretty much how it happened. I just said, this is what I'm going to do, and I set my mind to it, and started training clients, and then turned it into a full-time career. And it was pretty amazing because it was not something that I had ever imagined for my life. I never thought, if you had told me like 15 years ago that I would be a fitness expert, that's not where I would have seen my life. So it all kind of happened sort of accidentally, to be perfectly honest. And now here I am.
It's funny how it works like that.
Yeah.
So let's get a little bit into your approach with fitness and nutrition, and like, you know, with your clients and with the people that follow your blog and follow you. I mean, like, what's like the general approach there? Like, and what are the goals that, I mean, do you work primarily with women or with men as well?
I work exclusively with women. Obviously, my readership is varied, but as far as work, I work exclusively with women.
Oh, okay. So when a woman comes to you, what are their main goals that you help them accomplish? And is it like just like the fitness side, or is it also like the lifestyle stuff comes into that?
Right. So when I take on clients, I actually ask for their fitness intentions and their lifestyle intentions, and watch how the two sort of coincide. And usually what it is that women will come to you and say, you know, they want to look a certain way, they want to lose weight, they want to lose body fat, and it will be purely aesthetic if that's what you allow it to be. But there's always underlying things there. There's always you know, that's not the end goal for most people. They just don't know, right? It's usually has to do a lot more with self-acceptance, self-love, living a lifestyle where they are able to be flexible, live a lifestyle they want, to have a vibrant life, essentially, is what everybody wants. But it starts for a lot of people with a certain fitness goal. And that's usually like the gateway. Like, I really think that fitness is a gateway drug to living a full, wholehearted life. Because if you feel good, you obtain everything else that you want in life. So women primarily come to me because they are sick of dieting. They are sick of trying multiple programs and not having things work. They're sick of feeling like they're a slave to their fitness and nutrition intentions, and they want to feel sane, essentially, is what happens. So I don't work with people who are trying to do any sort of figure or fitness competitions. Not because I have anything against that, because I think it's a really amazing sport, and it takes a lot of discipline, and I really think that those people are incredible. But I primarily deal with women who are recovering from that. So a lot of my clients are ex-competitors, people who have been serial dieters, who have gone up and down and not found anything that they can stick to. So that's primarily the type of client that comes my way. And it's my favorite type of person to work with, because it's really fun to help women see that it's more of like sustainable lifestyle changes than 6-week like drastic physical transformation. So yeah, that's pretty much the type of client that ends up coming to me just naturally.
Yeah, it's funny how that kind of works out, because actually I've talked to quite a few girls that were into that, like those intense contests, the physique or the bikini modeling, and
Right.
they just had to get out of it because it literally just drove them insane.
Yeah.
And their whole life would revolve around their training and their diet, and everything else would just kind of like slip away. I mean, their social life would become non-existent, and so I mean,
Right.
it's their whole life is just eat what they're eating and their workouts. And at a certain point, it comes and it's just like is this like really what I want? Is this like literally a fulfilling life?
Right.
And eventually, I think a lot of us, because I mean, I was there to some degree at one point, not as obsessive as a lot of these people, but it was still too much for me to like, have the life I wanted. And I mean, actually, just on I think you had a Facebook post, and it was a picture of you, and then um, it was basically talking about like how in the last kind of few years, like you weren't as obsessed with like your training and and your dieting specifically. Um, but I mean, you looked fantastic in that picture. So like, I mean, I think that's the body that most women are after. They don't
Right.
want to get super super like lean because it's too much.
That Facebook post. That whole thing just kind of absolutely blew me away. Publishing that, like hitting post on that, is probably one of the scariest things I've ever done. Um, it it actually stemmed from the fact that on last Monday, I did a photo shoot. I fitness modeling not as a career, but just like when modeling opportunities come up, I'll almost always say yes because I just think it's fun to try on different clothes and get your hair and makeup done and meet different different people from different magazines and just have different connections. I think it's really fun. Modeling is never something that I've ever like really wanted to do just because I don't actually feel very comfortable being in the spotlight, but it's always fun because I like clothes. So I'm like, hey, I get to try on all these clothes and do exercises. So when I had this shoot last week, it was the first time that I've done a shoot since I've kind of not been photo shoot ready. Um, and I purposely didn't get ready for the shoot. I had probably like 2 weeks notice because magazines, for whatever reason, they don't like to tell you more than like a week or two in advance that when the shoot is. So I had like 2 weeks notice. Buckle down for those 2 weeks and been super strict and and done like water depletion and all these different things. But I decided that I was just going to carry on life as usual. And I actually had like a Cobb salad and a glass of wine the night before the shoot, and I was like, whatever happens, happens. So I showed up. I was much softer, much heavier than I have ever been on a photo shoot, and it was such a liberating experience for me to be able to just show up as I was with no preparation and say like, this is how I'm going to demonstrate these exercises. This is how I'm going to model. Like, this is my body right now. And I didn't realize that it was going to be that liberating for me. I was actually a little nervous showing up because I'm like, oh, what if they expect me to look, to have a certain look, to look a certain way? Because when you look through somebody's website, they're showing their highlight reel, right? That's what we do as fitness professionals. We have pictures on our websites, whatever, on all of our social media, and we don't show ourselves when we're not perfect. And I think that that's a problem. And that experience really highlighted that for me, that at the shoot might think that I'm going to look like I look on my website, and I don't always look like that. And so I was a little nervous, but it was exciting. It was liberating. It was exhilarating. And when I got home, I just felt really energized and really excited about sharing that experience with my readers. So when I showed that picture, basically what it was is it was a picture of me from 2009 when I was super obsessive about food. I counted calories like obsessively for 2 straight years. I think I counted calories every single day. I was uber lean, 12% body fat year round, but I was absolutely miserable. And I think what's really important to note here is that not all people who are super lean are miserable. And I feel like that was something that needed to come out of it. There's actually a lot that I want to address out of this, out of the post. But not all people who are lean are miserable. There are ways to be lean that are completely sane. Different people have different body types. It's easier for some people to be lean and harder for others. So it's not that I was miserable because I was lean. I was miserable because I was obsessed with food, and I was obsessed with fitness in not a healthy way. And my friends stopped inviting me out to happy hours because they didn't want me to screw up my diet. and I just wasn't happy. And so I live a very different lifestyle now. I'm still very fit. I work out, right? I work out every single day. I eat a very nourishing diet. I eat to support my body, but I don't freak out about having a cookie or drinking a glass of wine. And I indulge regularly. I just don't overindulge. And so my body looks very different. I'm 10 pounds heavier. I'm carrying more body fat, but I'm completely happy with my body either way. It's just that I'm happier with my life now, the way that it is. And that was the big point that I was trying to make. So it really was, it was an exciting thing to be able to show the difference in my body over the last 5 years, and to say that, like, I am a fitness professional, I'm a fat loss expert, this is what I do, and I'm not perfect, and I don't always look shredded and perfect, and sometimes I gain weight and sometimes I lose it again too, just like you. And it had more of an impact and more of a reimagined, and it really blew me away. So I think it was, I think it ended up with like 24,000 Facebook likes, which was, yeah, it was absolutely insane. The reach on the post was over 1.5 million.
Wow.
Jesus.
Yeah. It was crazy, which just kind of led me to the realization that that type of transparency from fitness professionals is something that, like, that's what our readers want. They want to feel like they're, like, it's not an unattainable goal to be a fit and healthy and balanced person. You know, they want to be able to look, women want to be able to look in magazines and see women who look normal, women who look like them. And I think that that's really important. So a lot of people were like, well, you look better now anyway, you know, you look more feminine. And I'm like, you're completely missing the point. I appreciate that you're I appreciate that you're being encouraging. Like, it's nice for people to say that, but at the same time, what that does when you say, like, you look better now than you did then, you were too muscular then, or you were too lean, what that really does is that body shames lean people. That's,
Right.
you know, it's still body shaming. Like, I'm not saying that being softer is more feminine or is better than being leaner. I'm saying that for me, having this transformation was enlightening, and I'm a happier person now. Some people are going to be really lean and be happy, and that's good for them. And some people are going to be less lean and be happy, and that's good for them. The point was to accept the fluctuations in your body and to have the realization that even as professionals, like, we're not always perfect. And not to say that, like, one body type is better than the other. All bodies are great. And to make.
Well, let's.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it was really interesting to bring up with the idea of that reverse body shaming, because you actually it's pretty common of people who like are at one ideal where they're not super lean, but then they shame the people who are lean. Actually, I guess I've never really, like, I've noticed it a lot, but I've never really thought much about it until you were just talking about that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Reverse body shaming. Interesting. Very interesting.
It's a problem both ways, you know. It is. And people don't feel comfortable saying that, because it's like, well, what do you really have to complain about? Look at you, you know? And it's like, no, it is a problem. It's a problem either way. It's a problem to shame people who are heavy. It's a problem to shame people who are lean. I mean, you get these whole things like the thigh gap thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
In people's effort to rally against the purposeful pursuit of a thigh gap, that's the problem, right? It's not people who have it naturally. It's people who, like, make themselves sick dieting to try to get a thigh gap, right?
You know, funny enough, I only heard about this thigh gap thing maybe a few months ago. It didn't even occur to me that there was like it didn't even register.
Right?
And then like, a few months ago, all I hear is like thigh gap, whatever.
Yeah. We live in a world where that, like, our world, where that just seems absurd to us, right? Like, we live in this bubble where we think that, like, that's ridiculous. Like, who would do that? But it's a problem. It's a huge problem. And it's not something that we should ignore, but at the same time, it's not something that, in our pursuit of rallying against it, we should then body shame women who are naturally skinny. And that's what ends up happening a lot is you see like people will post like, oh, thigh gap, like like this, close the gap, like let's go against the thigh gap type of thing. That's awesome. But at the same time, keep in mind that like some people look like that naturally.
Mhm.
And then they're like, well, what's wrong with me? Is there something wrong with the fact that I have thigh gap? We have to be really careful in the way that we approach body love and body acceptance, that when we do it, we're not alienating another group of people.
Right.
Yeah, and then on the male side, it's really common with, it's similar stuff, but it's just common of like, oh, you're not huge. And there's, a really
Right?
big body shaming community is like, you're not, a roided out bodybuilder size. So,
Chris, do you remember when we were, walking back from the Grove, and we're just about to cross like this boyfriend and this girl, and
oh, that was horrible. Oh my gosh.
as,
Yeah. Oh,
as Chris and I walk past this couple, what does the girl do? She turns to her boyfriend and is just like, look how skinny you are. Just as like Chris and I, who are pretty muscular, walk by, and we're
Oh
just
my
like, oh my god, she is just ridiculous. That is so mean. That's
yeah.
just turning to your girlfriend and be like, look how fat you are compared to that other like skinnier girl.
Yeah. Well, that wouldn't be acceptable, right? Like that would
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were basically just like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for that guy right now.
So bad for that guy. Yeah. There's like this double standard going on everywhere. So I mean, it
There.
kind of
There.
yeah. So it's like the reverse kind of thing. Let's talk a little bit about you said self-acceptance and
I'm sorry, I lost you.
okay, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about self-acceptance and the importance of that and how that fits in, even in just starting the journey, as well as like
Mhm.
kind of like um the kind of the danger with like defining your self-worth based on how lean you are or how much you weigh, because that's a huge issue.
Yeah. Well, the reason why it's so important, the self-acceptance aspect of it is so important, is because people yo-yo on diets, people program hop, people gain weight and lose weight, and they go up and down, and they live on this roller coaster because the idea is that when I look this way, like whatever the arbitrary goal is, then I'll be happy. And that's where the problem lies. That's why there's no consistency, there's no sustainability, because the whole ideal of happiness is based upon when I look this way, then I'll be happy. If I can get X, then I will feel this way, and that's completely unsustainable. If we can where we are happy with who we are regardless, then the pursuit of whatever physical, mental, emotional progress will then be sustainable. It'll then be something that no matter where you are in your journey, you will continue to progress because you know that you're not your acceptance, the way you feel about yourself isn't based on how you look. You can love your body and still want it to change. Like that's completely within the realm of possibility. And unfortunately, we live in a society where that's not the norm. That's not, people think, well, how can I possibly love myself the way I am now? Like when I want my body to be different. It's possible to love yourself the way you are now and to know that you're enough right now and still want to change and be healthier or whatever it might be. So from my perspective and in all the work that I've done with women, the major problem is that we think that having some ideal happy and that's not sustainable because bodies change, right? So like centering your whole worth around your body is a really dangerous place to be. Also, a lot of positive psychology shows that if your reasons for exercise and your reasons for having a certain nutritional lifestyle are purely aesthetic, then you're much less likely to actually maintain whatever those habits are. Studies show that goals that are more meaningful, like meaning markers that are more that have more depth, are what are actually going to sustain you in the long run with diet and exercise. And I think that that's something that's really important to address.
Yeah, that's super important. And um, actually, Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about like how it's really important to accept yourself before you can take positive action. Because like, interestingly enough, if you are scrutinizing the way you look and you're looking for some future body ideal to make you happy, then that whole journey is going to be rather painful because every day you're unhappy because the way you look doesn't fit in line with your goals, and so it's just like this obsessive compulsion to get to your goal, and the
Right.
whole while there's no enjoyment there, and then most often than not, or invariably, when you get to that goal, it's not that as fulfilling as you would have imagined.
Well, and I also see it as like if you base your happiness on that, it seems like you're accepting the fact that you're just not going to be happy for. You're not even opening
Right.
yourself up to it. It's not even an option, and you're not going to be happy until you're at that point. So
Yeah, that's a really
all
good.
those days, you're toiling away of like counting your calories and going to the gym and spending all that time on the treadmill or whatever you're doing to get there. You're just not even opening yourself up to it. It's not an option.
Right.
That sucks.
That's a really good point. That's actually a really good point because you do then create this reality where you can only be happy when you reach the end game. And then what? You know? And then
Mhm.
when you get there, like trust me, I've been there. It's a total letdown. It's not it's not actually an experience. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to set all of your happiness around what your body looks like. And honestly, I actually think that that's why figure competitions are something that never really appealed to me. I've been in gyms for 15 years as a trainer, so you get a lot of people like I even it happened to me the other day at Gold's. A guy comes up to me and he's like, it was actually really funny. It was probably the funniest way anybody's ever approached me at the gym. I had my headphones on and I wear Beats, so they're big, so you can see that I'm wearing headphones. And I do
Right.
that purposely because I'm an introvert. And so like people that I don't know talking to me makes me really anxious. So I'm like, okay, if I wear these, then people won't talk to me. But it doesn't actually work, unfortunately.
It doesn't work, huh?
It doesn't work. People talk to you anyway, and then you have to take off your headphones. So I'm at the gym, and I was like waiting for the pull-up bar. I think I was working in with somebody, so I'm just kind of like standing there, and this guy comes up like the mecca. It's the mecca of bodybuilding. It's an amazing place. But everybody, like a lot of the people that train there, are professional bodybuilders, and everybody's like super ripped and massive and shredded. It's a pretty amazing place. But so this guy comes up to me and he's like, "What do you look like that for?" And I was like, I
Mhm.
was especially confused because I was like, nobody's ever approached me like that. He's like, what are you looking like that for? And I was like, I don't know what you mean. I was like, what are you saying to me? And he was like, why do you look like that? And I was like, I don't, this is just how I look. And he was like, well, are you competing? And I was like, oh, okay, I get what he's saying now. But he was trying to be funny, so it was to his credit. It was actually pretty well done. But he's like, what are you training for? Are you competing? And it's a question that I don't know if men get it as much as women do. I mean, you guys can probably attest to that. But women who are muscular or in any kind of physical, what are you training for? And I'm not training for anything. I'm just training because like I enjoy training. I like being in good shape. I like being strong. I like being fast. I like the way it translates to my everyday life. And I was like, I'm not training for anything. I'm just training. Like it's just a part of my life. And he's like, oh well, you should compete. And I was like, here we go again. I'm like, I really have absolutely no interest in doing that. And I never have. And when I look at it, what I find when I actually like scrutinize and analyze it, what I realize is that, well, bodybuilding is a sport, right? It's a sport that, like you guys were talking about it earlier, like it ends up being your whole life, right? But any sport that you play professionally pretty much consumes your entire life. Whatever it might be. Professional athletes like live and breathe their sport, right? But bodybuilding is the only sport that completely is based on how you look, not on how you perform. And I think
Yeah.
that that's why it's never appealed to me, is that I don't my body looks. I would rather, if I'm going to be judged on what it can do. Because for me, that's far more sustainable. Like your body fat can change up and down 5 to 10%, and you can still be an incredible athlete. You can still perform. Your body can still do incredible things.
Right.
And to me, I just think that that's far more sustainable.
And bodybuilding is like one of those sports where literally you could put in a ton of work that day, and then just in like 1 hour you could just ruin it just by overeating and like
Yeah.
not being on track with your cut, and it's just like the dieting part just consumes your life 24/7 if it's like just a miserable experience.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah,
leaves,
that's
yeah,
it's a lot of pressure. And I think that the reason why there are certain, like the top bodybuilders in the world are the ones who continue to be the top bodybuilders in the world. You know, like the guy who wins Miss Olympia or Mr. Olympia, it's like the same guys over and over again,
yeah,
right? Because I really think that there is a very small subset of human beings that can continue that type of and not lose their minds. And it's if we look at bodybuilding like a sport as opposed to like a lifestyle, then I think that that's what can really help our clients, particularly women, to realize that those body types are not necessarily attainable. You wouldn't look at like you're not going to be a 30 to 40-year old woman who's maybe a mom or has a full-time job and then all of a sudden decide like I'm going to be a professional basketball player.
right.
Like, right, that doesn't happen, right? So like you're not going to then lose your mind trying to like in pursuit of this sport. But people do that with bodybuilding. And I think that's the problem is that if you look at it as you're an athlete, this is your sport, then it's a very different mentality than I'm doing this because I want my body to look a certain way.
Right.
You
Um,
know? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay, I was just gonna kind of switch gears here, just ask you a little bit about like how do you approach training and nutrition, for a lean, fit, healthy body. I mean, that's a broad question, but I guess
Right.
the first thing I'd like to ask is, what are your experiences with intermittent fasting? I know Chris and I talk a lot about this on the show, and we've heard like, with all our clients and everyone we work with, it's been like really, really effective. The only caveat is that with women, it's either hit or miss.
Right. And I think that you won't know if it's hit or miss unless you try it.
Right.
And I think that like there's been a lot of a lot of like alarmist type articles out there about how intermittent fasting for women is just like the worst possible thing you can do. And I think that a lot of that has to do with obsessive behavior, and I really feel like that in my experience is why it's been hit or miss.
Hmm.
I'm an intermittent faster myself. I can't tell you how long I fast for because I just fast until I don't. It's not something I obsess over because I'm a recovering a diet obsessed woman. So personally, I don't like eating until after I've trained. So when I break my fast is just whenever I've trained that day. And sometimes it's 7 a.m. and sometimes it's 2 p.m. It just depends on how my schedule is that day. For me, intermittent fasting works. It hasn't had any real negative effects that I can pinpoint to fasting being the thing that's caused any sort of negative effects. It works for my lifestyle. It works for my schedule. It allows me to not be obsessed about an eating schedule, which is just not something that I prefer to have. But for a lot of women, I think what has made it not work is that it just becomes another form of obsession. So when you go from frequent feeding, right, you've got like, okay, I have to eat every 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever it is, and you end up looking at the clock, right? Like, oh, it's almost time for me to eat, or oh, I missed my eating window, or whatever it might be. And then you do get really obsessed over the times that you're supposed to eat and how often you take that obsessive mentality to intermittent fasting, you then just apply it to intermittent fasting. You then look at the clock and you're like, it's 2 hours until I get to break my fast. And I think that's where primarily the problem has been, and a lot of what I've seen with women who say intermittent fasting doesn't work for them. You have to, if it's going to work for you, you really, I think, as women, we need to approach it from a more relaxed standpoint. You can't like beat yourself up because you broke your fast early, and you also can't force yourself to fast past a certain point if you're hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
we always talk about it in terms of like a tool in a toolbox, and not necessarily some strict, rigid thing.
right, right, I absolutely agree. I recommend that everyone, men and women alike, um, experiment with fasting, because even if you don't choose to use intermittent fasting as a lifestyle, like I fast every day, it just works for my lifestyle and I enjoy it. Even if you choose not to fast every day, you need to know what it feels like in order to use it as a tool. Because what happens if you're in a situation where food isn't available or good food isn't available? Like, for example, you're traveling, right? So I know a lot of people who are like, um, not used to going long periods of time without eating, and they get on a plane and they're on a plane for 7 hours and they didn't bring any snacks, and there's nothing to eat on the plane except for garbage, and then they're like, well, I just ate the garbage because I didn't have anything else to eat. Whereas if you had some experience with intermittent fasting, you could go that period of time without eating and be perfectly okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that it's a really important skill that everybody should hone. And whether or not you choose to use it as a part of your lifestyle is really just a personal experience. Some people, if they fast and they wait towards later in the day to eat, they will then continue to eat because they're like, well, let me just get as much food as I can during my feeding window. And that
Yeah,
again is that's obsessive behavior. That has nothing to do with intermittent fasting,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
right?
Know thyself. People
Right.
need to. You just know what'll work for you and what won't.
Exactly. So for me personally, if I eat breakfast, I find that I end up eating more throughout the day than had I
Oh,
not.
oh, for sure. Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
Me
So
too.
it really just is a matter of knowing yourself
Right. I like people that kind of
with intermittent fasting.
yeah, I like people that kind of approach it from this end. It's like if you have a specific goal and you have to lean down, then here are like your calories and macros for the day. Now, how's the most enjoyable way to sort of to kind of be in the ballpark of these? Is it
Right.
to eat like 6 meals a day? If that's what works for you, amazing.
Right.
But if skipping that breakfast and having like two bigger meals, or maybe a little smaller third meal in there is so much easier, then that's amazing. But then when people approach intermittent fasting, like, if I just fast 16 or 20 hours, then magically the fat will fall off, and then they
Right.
go on like a massive, just 4,000 calories in a few hours.
Right.
God.
It's not a magic pill. It's not going to make you any leaner. Like if you're over consuming, it doesn't matter if you're fasting or you're frequent feeding. Like
Right.
it's the overconsumption that's the problem. So I think that it's like that with any like new trend that comes out, right? It's like it gets really crazy and hyped, and then it sort of the hype comes down, and then we start to realize that we can like make it a little bit simpler and a little bit more rational. You just have to use common sense.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
So
sorry.
yeah, no, no. So what's like your workout schedule like? Like, you're doing strength training and cardio and yoga, or what's going on there?
Well, I like to do a lot of things. I think that it's really important to pick a sort of training regimen that makes you happy, like something that you actually enjoy. I like lifting heavy, and so I lift heavy probably about 2 to 3 times a week. Those are like my real, like, this is the day I'm gonna like squat, or I'm gonna deadlift, or I'm gonna work on actual like strength goals on these days. And then on the other days, I do yoga. I like to run hill sprints. I ride my bike a lot, and I ride my bike as a means of conveyance. So I don't actually. My husband and I share a car, and I never drive it. So I ride my bike everywhere. That's the great thing about living in Santa Monica. And I like to play a lot. So like on Saturday, we went. I took my family. We went to a trampoline park, and we just like jump on. I think play is a really important aspect of fitness. And basically, I just try to balance out heavy lifting with yoga and some metabolic work. And that usually ends up being like sort of an every other day kind of thing. So if I lift heavy on Monday, for example, then on Tuesday I'll take it a little bit lighter and I'll do yoga or I'll go for a walk and so on. So it kind of just varies. I don't actually have a schedule. I just make sure that if I did something really intense today, then I'm going to do something less intense tomorrow.
Right. Is there anything specific that you find women have to do differently compared to men in terms of strength training, or is it basically kind of just balances out and you just kind of get the body that you want?
I don't think that it's necessarily like a male versus female type thing, because I think that a man and a woman can both follow the same exact program.
Mm-hmm.
And get different results. The way that your body responds to a training program more to do with your genetics. So I think that's the really important part, is like understanding how your body reacts to a certain type of training and a certain type of nutrition. Women in particular, some women naturally have more testosterone than others. And some women naturally are going to develop muscularly more quickly than others. So it's just a matter of like knowing your body type and paying attention to how it reacts to the stimulus. And I think that's the hard part for a lot of people, is they want to be told like, no, this is exactly what I need to do and this is what will happen. And we can't do that because everybody's genetics are completely different. It's hard to teach intuition. It's a really difficult thing to do, but I, as a general rule, find that for most women, if you lift about 3 times a week and you focus on a lower repetition scheme, so like 10 or less, your energy on like increasing strength in major movements, like major pushing and pulling movements, squat, deadlift, pull up, push up, press, those types of things, then your body will naturally develop however your genetics are meant to develop. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good point to address right there.
Yeah, I mean, you can't you're like, I'm never gonna look like a Victoria's Secret model. That's not my body type. I'm short, I'm thick, I'm stocky. Like people are usually like, "Were you a gymnast?" Because that's the kind of body that I have, and I have to understand that the way I train, like my body is going to develop to look like a gymnast. I'm not going to look like a Victoria's Secret model.
Right.
So it's really a matter of embracing how your body is going to develop. If, as a woman, you find that the way that you're lifting is making you more muscular than you would like, then you just have to address that and change the way that you're lifting. And eating is a big part of it, right? So if you're like lifting in a way that's causing you to eat in a way that is like more of a bulking, then that's the problem right there. It's not that lifting makes women big. It's the way we lift and the way that our bodies are genetically inclined to develop.
That's another point with like even not just lifting, but whatever kind of exercise you're doing. Because a lot of people just try and follow something blindly. Oh, so and so said this is the best way to do things, but then they'll respond. And I'm thinking specifically of like endurance training, for example, of trying to do a lot of endurance training. People usually respond with like a heightened appetite after that. And
right.
If you're doing the math with like calories in, calories out, then it might seem great on paper. Oh, I can burn like 600 calories more by doing the same time period or what, I don't know. But what people think of in terms of like on paper, it might look really good for fat loss, because I know a lot of people just calculate, oh, if I just eat a little bit this much less and like burn this many more calories over the course of a week, I'll burn an extra pound of fat or whatever.
Right.
And it never shakes out that way, because usually certain types of exercise are going to make your appetite way higher. So then people just end up binging. Yeah, that's why I don't like to tell people, or I like to tell people to not even count, if they are counting calories, like to follow a specific program, to not count training as like a calorie burn, to use it as more of a as a like a body shaping and like to make you feel great, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like the if it fits your macros approach is like, I think it's actually pretty genius. And I think that that works really well for a lot of people because it's like flexible dieting. But I don't think that like adding in your expenditure is actually very accurate at all. And it ends up being too much of a numbers game. So just kind of like paying attention to your appetite is, I think, a little bit more beneficial than calculating expenditure.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. And if you've like have been like on with your macros and and you've been losing like a pound a week for several weeks, then you kind of know what that deficit feels like, and you can kind of work it with your appetite.
Right. I think the big problem with a lot of people when they're dieting is that they don't adjust their diet as they progress. And that's I think some macros, for example. Like if you lose 10 pounds, then your suggested macros for your body are then going to be different. And so I think a lot of people don't recalculate. They just start with one diet and then they continue with that diet, and that's why it stops working. And I think the bigger issue there is the adaptability, like understanding that like there is not a best diet in the world or a best training program in the world. There's the best program for you right now, and what works for you right now might not work for you 6 months from now. And I think that
because we all have decades of. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
So I was just saying, we all have influences on our biochemistry in our endocrine system. It's just we've all put different things in our bodies. We've had all this, certain amounts of stress over the years, and it accumulates. It tends to. So we're going to react differently over the course of time.
Absolutely. And so just I think adaptability is probably the best thing. Is just like learning to adapt change and learning to pay attention when something's not working anymore, and having that tool in your toolbox, like that ability to say, okay, I need to change the way I'm doing things. Like I can't do the same program for years on end and expect a different result.
Yep, I like how we've talked a lot about intuition today. It's so important.
It's very important. It's a difficult thing to sell. It makes it hard to run a business that way because people really want to be told exactly what to do. It is a lot harder to package intuition, but in the long run, it's actually more beneficial because then you teach people how to take care of themselves.
Yeah, it's helpful to teach people. You can teach people to. You can't teach them intuition, but you can teach them how to recognize, their own, or how to get in tune with it.
Right.
I guess.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes at first, it helps to start with a more of a structured protocol just to break away from your previous habits, and then bring in some relaxed kind of like big picture lifestyle approach. Works well. I mean, see, for me, like if I guess certain clients or whatnot, if they try and be kind of too relaxed in the beginning, then they just gravitate back towards what they were doing before. Right. But you know what? It depends, because then you have some clients where actually they do really well with more of like a relaxed approach in the beginning. But I mean, for me personally, I had to be really strict at first, and then And then I just naturally kind of gravitated to something a lot more balanced. But if I
Yeah.
tried to do that first, it wouldn't have gone down as well.
Yeah, I think it just depends on where you're starting, you know? It all depends on like where your starting point is. If your diet is in like complete disarray, and you have like no like for people who have like no knowledge of fitness and nutrition, then they absolutely need to start with something more structured. Because then how do you know where to start? Like where's your baseline, basically? Like you don't have a baseline. Like well, eat intuitively, like eat when you're hungry, but they don't know what hungry actually feels like. Or we can say, like, eat 6 ounces of chicken, and they don't know what that looks like. So we have to create sort of a baseline. I like, even though I'm like a big anti-calorie counting person, just because I've seen it like really like mess with people's heads, particularly women. I think that it's really important when you're first starting out on your like health and fitness journey to like calculate macros for maybe 1 to 2 weeks,
Hmm.
and then sort of ease off of that and do it more intuitively. But if you never know what an ounce of meat looks like or what a serving of vegetables looks like, and you don't know how much of that you're eating or that you're supposed to eat to support your body, then you don't know where to start. There's no way you can do it intuitively if you don't know what it actually looks like. So I agree with that completely.
Well, I think there's an important point to be made though, as well as we talk about a lot of like intuitive eating, common sense, and but for a lot of people who are new to really understanding, grasping, proper nutrition and fitness techniques, that there is definitely like we don't want to make it seem like there's no work to be done. Like you
Yeah,
do need to figure out what to do because a lot of people that's what they want to hear. It's like, oh yeah, it's effortless. You don't need to do any work. Um, while I think that balanced approach is ultimately what people need to find, and it's like they need to find that because they'll never have a sustainable approach otherwise. But I think in the beginning, everyone needs to go into it if they're just starting, knowing that they do have to do some work because
yeah,
they're trying to follow on a a fitness protocol or a nutrition protocol because of the fact that like they're at a place where they're not happy with what they have. Uh,
exactly.
so
And creating habits takes work. Like if you want to actually create a habit, you have to practice it, and you have to figure out what works for you, and you have to practice it regularly. It's not like, I talk a lot about effortless eating, but you don't just get there. You don't just and now, everything's perfect. It takes a lot of practice. It takes like even so much as like just not eating everything that's on your plate just because it's there. That takes practice. It takes a lot of if you're
That's
somebody who's always
that's
been a compulsive
really
eater.
that's really hard.
Yeah.
In the last 3 years, I've maybe done that. Like I count on one hand the amount of times I haven't finished
Yeah.
everything on my
And
plate. Like
there
especially if it's at Chipotle, I'd
especially
oh
if
my
always
it's
finish.
God.
Chipotle.
There are strategies though, like there are a lot of strategies that you can do. So like a lot of times what I'll do is if I go to a restaurant and I order a meal and it's rather large, then I'll usually ask for a box immediately, box up half of it.
Oh, it's smart.
And that's great because who doesn't like second dinner, right? Like I can always eat that again later on if I get hungry. But there's no reason to force myself to eat it just because it's on my plate. And I was always a plate cleaner as well because I think for a lot of us it starts with childhood. Like we're told to clean our plates. And that was always like we did it either out of fear or out of a reward mentality, right? So if you cleaned your plate, you're good, like you're a good eater, and then when you clean your plate, then you get dessert, right? So it's things that are very heavily ingrained in our brains. My dad used to tell me that if I didn't eat everything on my plate, that in heaven, God would make me pick up my food with my eyelashes.
Mhm.
And
That's new.
my dad was a really funny guy. He's got some really interesting ways of explaining things. But um, I don't think he knew the type of impact that it was going to have on me, but it was so frightening as a child to even think about having to do something like that. Like it was so physically out of the realm of possibility that it was it really screwed with me, and it turned me into like somebody who always ate everything that was on my plate. And those aren't habits that you can break easily. It takes a lot of time habits, but to break them, and it takes a lot of practice. So it's like you said, it is work. It's a matter of committing to the practice, and not only utilizing strategies daily that will help you create new habits, but also accepting that when you don't utilize those strategies, that you're not a failure.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big part of it. Because people will sometimes like, oh, well, I screwed up. Oh, well, I ate this thing that I wasn't supposed to eat. Like, I screwed up. Well, I might as well just keep going now. As opposed to like, okay, like, whatever. I slipped up. It's not a big deal. It's life. And then just continue back on the program.
Well, that's where what you said earlier of like indulging but not overindulging, and
Right.
allowing yourself to do that. That's like a huge concept. I think Greg, we've written about that. I think we wrote about it in that Chipotle and Pinkberry diet PDF.
Right.
But
Nice.
where of like the most important thing. Oh yeah, we actually we have a diet, Chipotle and Pinkberry diet. And we pointed out it was like probably the most important one thing, if you could only say one thing, is just to not overeat, for the next couple of years. It's like if that's what you want to do and get fit and you want it to be simple, just stop overeating in general. Like,
Yeah.
It's actually kind of hard, but like when you get there, you notice that over the 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, there's actually a big change takes place just by not overindulging.
Oh yeah. I actually have a strategy that I utilize with my clients and that I've written about called the first bite rule. And I started utilizing it because I was sharing a plate of those little brownie bites, those like one bite brownies that you get at Whole Foods. Like,
Oh, I love those things.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, they're amazing. And I'll eat the whole container without even realizing what I'm doing. And that's what happens, right? It's like we just eat without thinking, and then before you know it, it's all gone. And I was eating some with my son, and he had like maybe 3 of the little bites, and then he was like, I'm done. And I'm like, what do you mean you're done? Like, you're a kid. Why are you like not eating any more brownies? And he's like, well, I don't want it anymore.
Mhm.
And it was like this huge light bulb for me. I was like, satisfied. He'd had enough. He didn't want any more. And what I realized was that if you actually paid attention to things while you're eating them, when they no longer taste as good as like that first bite of the brownie, that's when it's time to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
that's how you know whether you're indulging in food or it's like your regular part of your diet. When it's no longer as good, like, when you eat a chocolate chip cookie, like it's fresh out of the oven and it's like amazing, and that first bite is like the most amazing thing ever.
Yep.
By the 6th cookie, it doesn't taste like that anymore.
Yeah, it's usually by like after the second one, you're just kind of
Right.
like, oh,
Right.
it's a chore. Yeah.
Doing it out of habit, right? So if you actually stop and realize that it's not like, then it's not actually an indulgence anymore. The indulgence is that pleasurable experience. And if you're not having that pleasurable experience with every bite, or in my situation, every sip with wine, with the like first glass of wine is like heaven. And for me, it's usually after 2, it's not that enjoyable anymore. So if I find myself drinking a 3rd glass of wine, I'm like, okay, am I really enjoying this, or am I just doing it out of habit?
Yeah, that's I like that a lot. It's really good. Super balanced.
Factor. That's why we indulge. I'm sorry, was that?
Oops, sorry. Yeah, it seemed like the connection was like
Yeah.
intermittent there. Yeah.
Losing it a little bit.
God, I was gonna add something there, but you guys totally just messed with my head there with the little connection thing. I lost my train of thought, but yeah, I mean that's an important point. It's all really like outlook, and this is where the relaxed attitude helps you so much. The more relaxed you are, the easier it is to have a little bit of cookies or ice cream and then still feel okay and happy with yourself and stop. But when you have that ice cream and those cookies, and then you feel like you did something wrong, and you feel guilt, and you feel like you've messed up your goals, then like paradoxically, because you feel worse, you're actually more likely to be driven into a food binge.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and yeah, it's like it's interesting how that works. But like literally, the more rigid I was, the more frequently I would overeat and feel really guilty. Then the more relaxed I became over the last couple years. Like it does not happen. It like literally does not happen. And it's
Yeah.
cool. You know, it's funny because we were talking about the whole like not leaving your plate. Like basically the whole idea of like cleaning your plate. Like I feel like more proud when I don't finish my food than like a lot of other accomplishments in life. I'm like, whoa, I stopped eating and there's still food left on my plate. Oh my god, I'm so proud.
I agree. I do that with my husband. If we go out to dinner and I somehow make one glass of wine last the entirety of like before the food gets there to after dinner, I'm like, John, look, I made a glass of wine last the whole. I'm like, aren't you proud of me? I like to me it is. It's an exciting accomplishment to be able to like live in moderation like that.
Right. It's like Louis C.K. had this really funny joke where he was kind of like talking and identifying with like people that are overweight, like eat a lot, and in his routine he's like basically imitating like this skinny person. It's like why can't you just have like one donut? He's like you don't understand, like one donut like turns into a spiral effect, and next thing I know I'm like looking for hookers and it's true like what's going on there, but it's like fun. I mean
Because it's not just about the food.
it's not. It's really not. Yeah.
Wow,
It's
and that's where it comes full circle to the mindset stuff. Like that we have to tackle that mindset stuff before anything else. Like there is no best nutrition plan, there is no best exercise plan. There is the best you that you can possibly be, and that starts with your mindset. If your mindset is all screwed up, then it doesn't matter what nutrition plan you do or what exercise plan you do, you're always going to come back to the same place.
right. And like, if for example you're like me, where if I have, for example, like a nice big slice of cake or like a good serving of brownies or a bowl of ice cream, then I know this about myself. I'm always gonna want to have more. Like I literally, I'm always gonna want to have more. But if I basically say like, this is the serving I'm having, this is what I'm gonna have, and I eat that, and then I wait like 20 minutes or just go do something, whatever, then it's like gone. Like I don't even think about it anymore.
Right.
But I think people are too easy, too quick to kind of like give in. It's like, yeah, I still want some more. And then they just go for it. And just like that little bit of time is usually what it takes me to kind of like shift gears away from like indulging.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that just happened yesterday, basically. I was having some ice cream and I was like, oh, God, I want more. I need more. And then I was just like, whatever. And then it went away. So,
Yeah. Just step away from it, do something else. And then if an hour from now you're still thinking about it, then, go back and eat it. Like that's a great strategy. My very good friend Jill Coleman, she runs a business called Jill Fit Physiques.
mhm.
She has this whole thing where she was like eating 5 protein bars every day because that's what happens with protein. Like, you guys eat Quest bars?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we did
How
an
hard is it
episode on Quest
to eat
bars.
one
Yeah.
Quest bar? Like, because that's like healthy people's like candy bars, right? You're like, oh, I gotta eat a million. These are so amazing, and it's really common. It's actually really common for people to overindulge in healthy foods like that. And Jill was eating like I think she said like 5 or 6 protein bars a day, and so what she started doing was purposefully just eating like a third of a bar, and then wrapping the rest up and putting it in her purse, and then going and doing something else. And if in a half an hour she was still and then do the same thing. And she would continue to do that until it was very normal for her to eat half a protein bar and not want the rest. Which I think is really like it's a perfect example of taking like something and creating and using a strategy to create a skill to develop a habit and having to do that over time.
Yeah,
Right.
that's great.
Well, then I guess we pretty much went full circle. I guess we can wrap up here. Is there any final comments or things that we want to add?
Mm, no, we're just very glad to have you on. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Anything I can do to help spread sanity in regards of fitness and nutrition for women, that's really the goal for me, is to teach women that they can live like a vibrant, wholehearted life without being constantly obsessed about food and exercise.
So for people to find you, should they go over to Neghar, Fonooni.com?
Yes, so negharfonooni.com is my website, and you can contact me there if you form. I primarily, as far as like the social media space is concerned, I primarily interact on Facebook, and my Facebook page is Eat, Lift, and Be Happy, and on Instagram. So Neghar Fonooni on Instagram.
And
Okay.
we'll link to all of those at roadtorip.com for everyone listening.
Yeah, for sure. And do you have any courses that you're selling there, or coaching that you're doing?
Well, my coaching program is actually it's already in full swing, and so there's not going to be any openings for that until next year. But I have my Lean and Lovely 12-week transformation program, and that is always on sale. And I also am going to be
That's a great
starting.
name, Lean and Lovely. I love
It,
it.
it is, isn't it? I came up with that. I'm pretty proud of that, actually. But we are actually we're working on developing a whole Lean and Lovely franchise. So there's going to be, later on this year, there's going to be Lean and Lovely Yoga, and it's going to be, I think is super important because I love yoga, and I don't always have an hour and a half to spend at a yoga class. So there's going to be that, and then there's going to be another Lean and Lovely installation, which is actually going to be follow along 20-minute workout. So we're going to be working on that for the next year or so.
All right, awesome. So you guys can go to negharfonooni.com. That's NEGHARFONOONI. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, thanks for listening, guys. It's the Road Trip Podcast. Catch you next time.